car was really hitting an aerodynamic kind of wall at about 196 miles an hour. For our 5th Car Trek series, which just finished airing on Freddie Tavarish's channel, we were going to go on a journey in our dream cars. My manual LP640, Tyler Hoover in his SLS AMG, and Freddie in his Aston Martin DBS. And these are all cars we love dearly. Unfortunately, we've been able to buy them thanks to the viewership and support of our channels, and it's just been a whole lot of fun. And so we were looking for a way to kind of celebrate that and also reflect back all the way on our first cars and kind of our journeys as car enthusiasts. And so since each of those are high-performance supercars, finding a venue where we could really test their top speeds sounded like an awful lot of fun. And for me personally, as many times as I've gone over 190 miles an hour, I've never been able to go over 200. And so trying to find a place where I could do that in my Mercy, which is supposed to go 211 miles an hour, seemed like an awful lot of fun. And so even though my car wasn't running all that perfectly in most of the tests that you'll have seen if you've already watched the series, I still wanted to find us a place. And I reached an agreement with a very long, very famous runway, and we had everything booked up. We were all ready to go. However, an auto manufacturer with a bit of a reputation for dishonesty and not necessarily following the rules had gone there a few months prior and then released a video not following the rules of this venue. And that made them very mad, and it made them essentially reject anybody's request for wanting to film there. And so even though we had everything in place, it ends up getting canceled on us. And so fortunately, at the last minute, Freddie was able to line up another private runway very close to him, but it was a little less than a mile. And so with a braking zone, we were only able to run about 0.7 of a mile. But with the way the Mercy was running that day, I only managed about 160 miles an hour, and Tyler's car was launching a lot harder. And so in the defined area, he did a bit better than I did. So check out that episode if you haven't already seen it. But I continued some discussions with other contacts that might be able to find us a bigger runway in the weeks leading up to the shoot. And one of the guys that I had sold some cars to while I was working at Lamborghini Atlanta was a guy named Eric Nelson with a company called Precision Exotics. Now, he's got a background in the military, works a lot with the armed forces, and also works at air shows through a relationship with Stacey Newman Events. And I was asking him if he had any runways that we might be able to get access to, but obviously his kind of entrance into that is generally limited to when there are air shows, and there weren't going to be any air shows during the time that we'd be filming Car Trek 5, and so that was going to be a little bit difficult. But we talked through some options, and essentially what he does is he has a company that lets audience members of these air shows take out a Ferrari F430 or a Lamborghini Gallardo Spider, both of which he bought from me at the dealership, and they can run just about as fast as they want to. And so these two cars, since I sold them, have barely spent any time under 150 miles an hour. It's absolutely amazing, and he's currently retiring those, buying some new cars, and it's an awesome, awesome project. But he also acts sort of as a performer at these air shows, and sometimes he will do things where he interacts with the cars and some of the planes. And so he had told me, kind of almost jokingly, if you guys could make it out to Lake Charles, Louisiana, the weekend after we knew we were going to wrap filming for Car Trek 5, he could get us out on the runway there. And that was going to be almost a 2-mile runway, a great venue to test out any supercar. And so I was like, man, that's really tough because I don't think we can make it out there. So as we shot the series, and obviously we didn't hit the top speeds we were hoping to on that limited runway, the idea of sort of using that as the prize for whoever won the most challenges within the series came back up. So we were filming sort of the finale of Car Trek 5 here at my house around my fire, and we were just talking through kind of the history of Car Trek and our history with cars and the channels and everything else. And the idea came up of, well, since I had won the most challenges for the first time in a Car Trek series, perhaps this could be the prize for winning, because the other two couldn't make it out that next weekend, but I had some free time. I said, I wouldn't mind road tripping the Mercy out there and then see what we could do. Now, at that point, they'd already confirmed a different car. One of Eric's friends had a brand new 765 LT from McLaren, and since we had begun the series with a drive in a McLaren F1, driving another McLaren built almost 25 years later seemed like a great option. So I road tripped out to Lake Charles, Louisiana, and went to the Chenault International Air Show. And the stunt that was kind of planned was one of the most prolific acrobatic pilots in an amazing MiG jet. Randy Ball, in a 1960 MiG-17, was going to be doing some stunts and some stunt driving, and they had two different kind of races against a car in mind. Now, they do this at many air shows around the country, and they'll sub in different cars, and they very, very carefully measure out everything to make sure of when and where they're going to be, so it can be done as safely and admittedly as entertainingly as possible. So I show up, and I'm not going to be driving my LP640, but I have it out there, and I meet the owner of the 765. We do some testing early in the day, and then it becomes time to sort of choreograph everything in the final rehearsal. So that's actually when my chance to drive the car came up. Now, this is a 755 horsepower, absolutely amazing car. A couple weeks earlier, I'd been around several for Gold Rush. The cars are incredible. They're very, very fast. And obviously, I do love a lot about the McLaren brand. Some of their more recent cars have a reputation of unreliability, but this one was only a few hundred miles old. He just picked it up, and it was spectacular. The roof scoop, the Club Sport MSO options, everything you could dream of in the top-of-the-line McLaren of today. Now, the stunt that they were really trying to rehearse was something where they kind of race to the tower. So right at show center, they've got the control tower, which is in charge of everything that's going on. So the plane would say go when he's about 8,000 feet behind the starting line on the runway. The car launches and goes as fast as it possibly can. And the honest goal is for them to kind of coincide as they come across show center at top speed for the car, which was obviously going to be hopefully about 200 miles an hour. The top speed of a 765 LT is listed as 205 miles an hour. And in the early testing, they were having a little bit of trouble because the car was really hitting an aerodynamic kind of wall at about 196 miles an hour. Of all things, it would just race up to there, and then the next few miles an hour gained very, very slowly. But we had a lot of room to work with, and so the plan was to time it so that, again, you'd come through right then. And if you see the footage, while it's a race, the airplane is on the brakes as they're trying to intersect there. And so they had done some math, they had done some testing, but then it was my turn to really try it for the first time. Now, before we did this, he obviously has to take off, the pilot. And so what we were going to try to do was a drag race. Now, admittedly, a car launches a whole lot harder than a plane, but once a plane gets moving, it goes an awful lot faster. And one of the things that was really important to Randy, the pilot, is he wanted to get some really cool footage of these giant afterburner flames shooting out of the back of his airplane. So he really wanted me to stay behind him. So while we framed it, admittedly, as a drag race, and we were driving as fast as we could alongside each other, I had to hang back a little bit so that we would have that shot in the roof-mounted GoPro as the plane took off. And so we take off, and I could have run away from him a bit, but then as soon as he hit the afterburners and got the thing off the ground, it went crazy. And so on that run, I think we hit 197 miles an hour because of having to hold back early on. But that meant, you know, if we get to really send it, there's a pretty good chance I'm gonna hit 200 today. So for the next thing, he went out and circled around. I went to the end of the runway and came back, and I was waiting for his call of when to go. Now, this is the fastest car they've ever done this with. And so even though they had done the math and thought of exactly when I would need to leave, I think he had kind of underestimated just how fast this McLaren was. And so when he says go, I send it, and holy cow, this thing builds speed like a freight train. I mean, it's just relentless, the acceleration. So we hit that 196 wall, and then it's 197, 198, 200, and I did get all the way up to 205 miles an hour. We hit that top speed, and quite honestly, we just stayed at it for a good while. And so we passed the center of the show right at 205 miles an hour. He is a touch behind me, but then obviously he leans back into it and blasts right off and does some amazing stunts. We got to see all the other performers, the Blue Angels, everybody else that was out there at the air show, and it's really an awesome thing. I had never personally been to one of these air shows. Super duper cool and amazing to have had the opportunity. And so I got to hit 200 miles an hour. I got to race a fighter jet, and it sort of just became the perfect bookend to our journey on Car Trek 5. And in fact, we made some speed limit signs to celebrate 205 miles an hour. And if you'd like one, we made 100 of them, so you can buy one at our store at the link in the description. But, you know, it was definitely kind of one of those bucket list items for me personally to hit 200 miles an hour. Now, I suppose I just want to do it even more times, but what an amazing car. But it was also cool just to see how far McLaren had come since the 1990s. And the F1 was just such an amazing thing to start the thing off with, but also to see where they were now was just as special. And so I had an amazing time. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to Auto Tempest for supporting another series. We're just about to head out and shoot Car Trek 6. The cars are almost ready, but they need a few more things. And so that will occupy me for the next few days. But if you haven't already watched the series, please check it out. Go to Auto Tempest, search for your dream car, and a huge thank you to pilot Randy Ball, his MiG jet, and everybody at Precision Exotics and Stacey Newman Events for making this amazing experience possible. Thank you all so much for supporting our channels, allowing us our journey to our dream cars, and thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Of course, we want to thank Premier Financial Services for their support of the channel this month. Their Simple Lease is truly one of the best products available in the world of exotic car financing. It allows you to minimize your payment, minimize your down payment, accumulate equity, move in and out of cars in the way you want to, and they have the ability to move you all the way up to even a McLaren F1 if you decide or you're able to buy one, which I would highly recommend if you can. But they've done a bunch of brand new McLarens, 765 LTs included, Sennas and the like, but be sure to check them out at the link in the description below to thank them for their support of VINwiki.